Hey, what's up pups, it's JR and welcome back to another episode of BTD. My upload schedule has been really weird since my Christmas and New Year's break, but I'm gonna try and fix that now that I'm back on a diurnal sleep schedule again. So seeing as how I haven't gotten a chance to say this in a video yet, Happy New Year! I have high hopes for 2019 and I hope you'll all be there along for the ride with me. There also hasn't been a chance for me to feature all the fan art you guys made for me over the break, so let's just take a quick second to do that, why don't we? Okay, just a few more things to cover now. I was trying to hold off until what I was doing was actually done, but the thing I was trying to do proved to be horrendously complicated, so I decided why not just break it out right now, because I kind of already did both on live stream and in the Discord. Hopefully soon, I am going to be replacing this Mangle avatar with an avatar that I've made myself from resources that these lovely people provided over on DeviantArt. There's clipping issues and whatnot, but here's a quick preview of what the new avatar looks like. Her working name right now is Alice, purely because I like that name. Shout out if your name's Alice. Oh, and for those of you wanting more VRChat stuff, I am planning to make more VRChat videos, I just want to get the new avatar all set up first. But now that all those points are out of the way, let's move on to something a bit more serious. Turn off the RC Revenge music. Warframe is in a horrible state right now. A while back, I felt a similar way, and I just hoped that Fortuna would change something to make it a bit more enjoyable. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Fortuna overall, including Fortuna Part 2, was a very lackluster update. We didn't even get Melee 3.0 to see if that would finally be the thing to kill Mimic Strike. On top of that, Saren remains horrendously overpowered and overplayed to the point that there's now a high chance that public queuing will warrant you being thrown into a squad with more than one Saren, making it so you can do next to nothing, thusly completely draining out the fun that was left in the game. Warframe is an MMO. It's meant to be played with other people. So when you're unable to play online without having even less fun than you would solo, and are forced to play online when you can't do something solo, there's next to no point in playing. You could very well play with friends, but in my specific case, a lot of the friends I play with commonly feel the same way I do, namely my brother, who rarely plays anymore. And when we do end up playing, the call is usually filled with us talking about all the problems Warframe has in its current state. Long story short, Warframe is not enjoyable anymore, and if I want to have that title of being the most honest person on YouTube, I need to say when I've had enough. I hope you all understand. I can't base my YouTube channel around something I hate if I don't want to fall back into the depression I had before I had a chance to make YouTube my job. So, this is going to be the last season of Built to Destroy. I'm still most likely going to be doing the sortie every day and things like that, so I'll be playing Warframe a little bit, so Warframe videos aren't completely out the window. Most likely when DE adds something or makes a change I feel like I need to talk about, I will make a video on it. But by and large, I'm putting the last nail in the coffin. I need to stop uploading Warframe videos so often if I want to keep my passion for YouTube alive. Now, while this is the last season of BTD, this is not the last episode. There are 2 more weapons I've been saving to show off for the series finale, so after this video, there will be 2 more episodes. The first will be going on my hate, a much requested weapon due to how amazingly powerful it seems in idle gameplay and live streams. And the second will be single-handedly the most powerful weapon in the entire game, and I guarantee it will not be something you expect. I thought it was only right to finish off my series of building unpopular weapons with the greatest example of a sleeper in the entirety of Warframe. A weapon no one ever uses, but the same weapon with the highest potential DPS in the entire game. So hold out for that video. But before we can get into that, we have to finish this video first. So, turn the RC Revenge music back on. There are a few Warframes that I was legitimately hyped for when they were first announced. The 2 best examples of this are Korra and Garuda. From their concept to their design, I was super hyped for both of these Warframes. And luckily, when they dropped, I was completely satisfied. Korra was exactly what I was hoping for, and Garuda well exceeded my expectations, so that's why she's my new favorite Warframe now. However, the third Warframe not only fell flat, but was just generally an unfun Warframe to play.
The cool thing though is that she recently got a bit of a tweak to her abilities. When DE was talking about her rework, I was not expecting much at all, as the way they were describing what they planned to do made it seem like it would not fix her core issues. But now that it's in the live build for PC, not sure about console when this video goes up, she isn't exactly a million times better, but she is much more enjoyable than she was. So, let's take a look into the new and improved Titania. Titania is the fairy/forest guardian Warframe whose abilities can support you and your teammates, distract enemies, or even throw damage with the best of them. She comes with 100 base shields and health, 65 base armor, and 150 base energy. She is obtainable through the Silver Grove quest, which can be started through Amarin of the New Loka Syndicate in any of the relays. You're able to start this quest after completing the second dream and reaching Master Rank 7, so Titania is much more available than a lot of the Warframes I've covered in past videos. Quick little fun fact about her. Titania's name comes from the Queen of the Fairies of the same name in Shakespeare's play A Midsummer Night's Dream, and she is the wife to the King of the Fairies named Oberon.
So this will probably be the closest we can get to a canon ship between two Warframes. Anyway, in an effort to not make this video 3 hours long, I'm gonna skip the usual song and dance and go right into her abilities.
Titania's passive ability is useless. Read that wrong. Titania's passive ability is Dust Bloom, which enhances her own bullet jump and rolling distance by 25%, as well as leaving behind a, quote, trampoline, unquote, after bullet jumping that grants the same boost to any allies that roll or bullet jump while standing in it. Much like Zephyr's lightweight passive and Neja's frictionless passive, Dust Bloom will take a bit to get used to, but once you get the hang of it, it does come in pretty handy in some scenarios, albeit rarely. Titania's first ability is Spellbind. When cast, Titania scatters fairy dust in a base 5-meter radius around wherever she is looking, with a base range limit of 50 meters. Any enemies caught in range of the dust on the initial cast are whisked weightlessly into the air, rendering them unable to fight back for a base duration of 16 seconds. Allies caught in the range of dust, including Titania herself, will be rendered completely immune to all status procs for the full duration of the ability. A cool thing about this ability that I was completely unaware of until making this video, when an enemy is affected by Spellbind, along with not being able to do anything for 16 seconds, they also have their weapons revoked and can only reobtain them after the duration of the ability runs out and they actively go and retrieve them, much like when a Drakmaster takes your gun. Their weapons are dropped at their feet the moment they get affected by Spellbind, so they need to return to wherever they were when you sent them up into the stratosphere. Spellbind benefits from range and duration mods. Titania's second ability is Tribute. When cast on an enemy, the enemy is ragdolled, much like Necros' Soul Punch ability, and they leave behind a silhouette of themselves that grants one of 2 buffs to Titania and her allies, or 2 debuffs to any enemies in range. The enemy targeted with Tribute will also have their damage output reduced by 25% for a base duration of 12 seconds. Luckily, the bonus you get is not based on random chance. Casting Tribute on ranged enemies like Lancers, Troopers, Crewmen, and Moas will grant the Dust debuff. Dust reduces the accuracy of all enemies within a 30-meter radius of Titania by 50% for 2 minutes. Unfortunately, these values cannot be changed. Casting Tribute on melee units like Butchers, Flame Blades, and Prod Crewmen will grant the Thorns buff. Thorns reflects 50% of damage taken back to the attacker, so long as they are within 40 meters of Titania. This buff lasts for 2 minutes as well, and the values cannot be changed. The wiki seems to say nothing about this, but I'm pretty sure this buff works by redirecting damage instead of sharing it, which means enemies will do half of the initial damage they do to you and half of the damage to themselves. So this doubles as damage resistance for Titania and any allies in range. I've been playing a lot of Titania these last few weeks, and this very much seems to be the case. I would also like to specify that an enemy has to be within 40 meters of the person they shot. So you could be 39 meters away from your Titania, and if an enemy is 39 meters away from you in the same direction, he'll still take damage by shooting you. Casting Tribute on support units like Grineer Regulators and Corpus Shield Ospreys, as well as minions such as Hayeka and Drax, will grant the Full Moon buff. Full Moon increases the damage of all companions by 75% for 90 seconds. This includes your allies' companions if your allies are within 30 meters of you. These values cannot be changed. Finally, casting Tribute on heavy units like Heavy Gunners, Bombards, Corpus Techs, and Infested Ancients will grant the Entangle buff. Entangle reduces the movement speed of enemies within 10 meters of Titania by 25% for 2 minutes, and of course, these values cannot be changed. The base 500 damage dealt to the target of Tribute, and the duration of the damage reduction given to them are affected by strength and duration mods. and the range you can cast tribute on enemies is affected by range mods. This is a pretty complex but pretty helpful ability, so I'd advise keeping your buffs up as much as you can. However, I'd say don't bother getting the Entangle buff from heavy units because the speed reduction is so little for having such a short range. I only have one gripe about this ability. I wish you could increase the values of all buffs save for dust, seeing as how not only would you be able to make it so enemies can't hit you at all, but you would also not be able to take advantage of thorns because no one would be doing any damage to you. Titania's third ability is Lantern. When cast on an enemy within a base 25 meters, Titania transforms them into a mesmerizing light that draws in enemies within a base 20 meters to stare at it and walk closer to it, taking them out of the fight. You can make a maximum of 4 enemies into lanterns. The lantern lasts for 25 seconds base and, upon running out of duration, or manually being cancelled by holding the ability button, will detonate, dealing 2,500 base damage to any enemies within 8 meters of the lantern. In addition to this, enemies within a base 2.5 meters of the lantern while it is active will continuously take damage from Titania's little metal butterfly friends called Razorflies. I bring them up because they will show up again later. The Razorflies deal 350 base damage per second to any enemies in range. The damage per second of the Razorflies, as well as the explosion, is affected by strength mods. The duration of the lantern is affected by duration mods, and the attraction radius, explosion radius, and attack radius of the Razorflies are all affected by range mods. You and your allies can move the lantern slightly by shooting it as well. However, your allies and your sentinel can move it substantially more than you for some reason, which is very annoying when you want to keep the lantern in place. Thusly, my gripe for this ability is you should be able to either hold the ability button while looking at the lantern to anchor it in position, or DE should just remove the ability to move it by shooting it, seeing as how it barely moves at all without any input. There's next to no point for that to be a thing, save for slight novelty. Titania's fourth ability is Razor Wing. When cast, Titania shrinks down to the size of a fairy and is given the ability to fly, as well as her own unique arc gun, Dexpixia, and arc melee, Dewata. The style of flying while in Razor Wing will seem familiar if you were around for the initial release of Arcwing, as it uses the same mechanics as Arcwing did back then. While in Razor Wing, Titania becomes 50% harder to hit because she's so much smaller, so this works amazingly well with her dust buff up, as you will rarely get hit. Also, and this used to not be a thing before her small rework, you also benefit from the Aviator mod while in Razor Wing, seeing as how you are always in the air. The wiki seems to disagree, but I have tested and this is certainly the case. So mark my words, Aviator works on Titania when in Razor Wing now. I'm assuming DE realized that making it so Aviator doesn't work while in Razor Wing was super fucking stupid and changed it as a quality of life update for Titania with her rework. Nextly, again, while in Razor Wing, Titania sends out 6 Razorflies that seek out and deal damage to enemies. They deal 80 base damage to anyone they attack and will not go away until either you exit Razor Wing or they are individually killed by enemies attacking them. So even if they don't do a whole lot of damage, they still pull aggro, so you'll have an easier time surviving. Now for her exalted arc weapons. Dexpixia is a pair of fully automatic machine pistols that deal 160 base damage per shot and sport a high 25% base status chance. They both hold 30 rounds in a magazine, so that totals out to 60 shots, and being arc guns, regenerate ammo after a moment of not shooting. Now that you can modify exalted weapons independently, you can modify Dexpixia in the arsenal using secondary mods. Her arc melee, Dewata, has 200 base damage and has a decent crit chance of 20% paired with a 2x crit damage. Unfortunately, while you can modify it with normal melee mods instead of arc melee mods, you cannot use mods that focused around giving you a buff due to the combo counter, like Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds, so Dewata ends up being pretty lackluster compared to Dexpixia. Luckily, it still has one major use, and we'll get to that in a moment. The base damage of her weapons, as well as the damage of her Razorflies, are affected by strength mods, and luckily, the Razorflies do not have an attack range, so they'll just fly around until they find someone to attack. Now for a quick look into augment mods. Titania has 2 augments, and both seem decently helpful, so while I don't use either, we'll still be looking into them either way. Her first augment is for Lantern, being Beguiling Lantern, which makes it so enemies that are mesmerized by Lantern take double melee damage. However, the melee damage is not increased by strength mods. Oh, and the damage increase doesn't affect Zenistar's disc, so for all of you thinking you could use this augment to make your max range Zenistar more cheesy than just using Lantern, you're shit out of luck. And her other augment is Razor Wing Blitz, obviously being for Razor Wing. This makes it so when you cast abilities while in Razor Wing, you increase your flight speed and fire rate by 25% for 8 seconds. Luckily, you can increase both the buff and duration of said buff using strength and duration mods. The duration of the buff can also be increased by stacking the buff by casting more than one ability. You can stack it up to 4 times, quadrupling the duration of the buff, but not increasing the buff itself. It seems to me like DE was expecting you to cast Razorwing, then get your 4 tribute buffs up while in Razorwing when they were making this mod, and that seems like an advisable strategy.
And now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's get on to my builds.
On Titania, I have Redirection, Vitality, and Primed Vigor increasing Titania's health and shields to 960. Blind Rage and Umbral Intensify increasing her ability strength. Fleeting Expertise and Streamline increasing her efficiency and counteracting the debuff of Blind Rage, and Primed Continuity increasing her duration and counteracting the debuff of Fleeting Expertise. And finally, Energy Siphon as my go-to aura mod, and Aviator in my Exilus slot to get that 40% damage reduction while in Razorwing. On Dex Pixia, I have Barrel Diffusion, Hornet Strike, Lethal Torrent, Primed Heated Charge, Pathogen Rounds, Convulsion, and Pistol Pestilence increasing my overall damage, fire rate, status chance, and adding gas damage to the mix. I also have a secondary setup with corrosive damage instead for high armor enemies. And finally, I have Seeker adding 2.1 meters of punch through for enhanced CC. With this build, my Dex Pixia gets up to 15,927 average overall damage and 74,284 average DPS. Finally, my Dewata is not formed or full built because it's simply inferior to Dex Pixia, so there's almost no point to use it. However, you can build it focusing on damage and crit, and use Life Strike so you can simply channel with Dewata and use it as a form of self-healing as opposed to a normal damage dealer. As well as you get to save time and effort by not having to full build 3 things for one Warframe.
Finally, we have reached the end of the video, so let's go see what Titania can do. That'll wrap it up for this episode of Built to Destroy. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, and make sure to hit that subscribe button to become a pup if you haven't already. Also, if you want to support me in the channel, consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month. And remember, this is not going to be the last episode of Built to Destroy. There are 2 more after this, so watch out for those videos. My name's JR, and I'll see you guys in the next one.